All right, so we're diving into some serious controversy today.
Oh, yeah.
Joker, Folie, Deux.
Yeah, I've heard some things.
So you've seen the first Joker,
Of
right?
course.
So
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it was dark.
It was really dark.
I mean, it was a phenomenal movie. I'm not
Yeah.
going to get into all that.
Yeah.
But the sequel's out,
Yeah.
and it's got people talking,
It's gotten people really talking.
but not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, huh?
So to help unpack all this, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Captain Midnight's review of Joker 2.
Ooh.
Now, Captain Midnight, he's a YouTuber.
Yeah.
He's known for his kind of like surgical, very precise
Yeah.
movie breakdowns.
Yeah, he does a really good job.
He did not like this film.
No.
So, you know, obviously it's just one person's opinion.
Of course.
But he brings up some really interesting points.
I think he makes a really good point right off the bat when he talks about sequels, you know? Like Joker, the first one, was very much an endpoint. Like that character arc was complete, so how do you even go from there?
Where do you even go from there? I mean, he even uses this really clever analogy.
Yeah.
With Godfather Part 2.
Oh, interesting.
And he says, you know, imagine if they made a Godfather Part 2 where Michael Corleone suddenly decided, I want to be a good guy.
Right.
It would just betray the entire point of the first movie.
Yeah, it'd be so jarring.
I thought it was such a brilliant analogy. So I'm curious, did you think there was more story to tell after that first movie?
Honestly, I kind of felt like that was the end of the road for Arthur Fleck. Like we saw him become the Joker.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It was shocking, but it felt like a complete arc.
It was an earned ending.
It really was.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so speaking of things that might not have been earned, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
This movie is a musical.
A musical.
A musical.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So Joaquin Phoenix
Okay.
is singing.
Okay.
And dancing, presumably.
I mean, that's a bold choice.
It's a bold choice.
Bold choice. You know, I think when it comes to musicals, there's a real art to it.
Yeah.
You think of the classics like Singin' in the Rain or West Side Story.
Right.
The music, it propels the story. It reveals character. It's not just there for the sake of it.
Yeah.
It's woven into the fabric of the story.
And this is where Captain Midnight, he takes issue.
Oh, really?
Because he's saying the musical numbers in Joker 2, they actually stop the movie dead in its tracks.
Interesting.
He wasn't crazy about Phoenix's singing.
Okay.
He felt like it lacked a certain, like, I don't know, showmanship maybe. And he's saying that it clashes with the whole tone, the gritty, dark tone of the first film.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I get it.
No, I totally get it.
But, okay, but hear me out for a second.
Yeah.
Part of me is kind of fascinated by the idea of the Joker singing.
Really?
Right. Like these dark, twisted, show tunes about chaos and madness.
I mean, thematically,
Right.
it's intriguing.
It's intriguing. Like maybe a creepy tango with Harley Quinn.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there's some dark comedic potential there.
Right. Okay.
But it's a high wire act for sure.
Yeah. Be really hard to pull off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I've got the sequel problem. We've got the musical element, which jury's still out.
Right.
But wait, there's more.
Okay. Tell me more.
Captain Midnight also was not a fan of the courtroom drama aspect of this film.
The courtroom drama. Well, usually courtroom dramas, they grip you, right?
Right.
The tension, the clashing personalities, the suspense.
You know, I was thinking about that. Like, real-life courtrooms can be pretty dramatic, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I mean, you see these lawyers, putting on a show.
Yeah, playing to the jury.
Right, trying to sway the jury.
Exactly.
So I think we're conditioned to expect a certain level of,
Yeah.
fireworks when it comes to legal battles.
Absolutely. So what happened in Joker 2? What didn't Captain Midnight like about it?
He found it predictable.
Oh, no.
He said Arthur's lawyer was completely uninteresting.
Oh.
And that it lacked that kind of chaotic, unpredictable energy that you'd expect from a Joker storyline.
Yeah.
He even suggests that, like a Better Call Saul kind of vibe.
Oh, interesting.
Where Arthur's pulling these crazy legal stunts.
Right.
It's been way more entertaining.
I would love to see that.
Right. So it begs the question, I mean, does predictability ruin the tension?
Yeah.
Or is there something to be said for seeing a more subdued, maybe even a more defeated Joker navigating the courtroom? What do you think?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I think sometimes subverting expectations can be really effective, but it has to be done with a purpose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can just fall flat.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that maybe fall flat, let's talk about Harley Quinn.
Okay, yeah. This is where Captain Midnight, he throws down the gauntlet.
He did not like the Harley Quinn portrayal.
He thought her role and her motivations felt very underdeveloped.
Okay.
And that the romance between Harley and Arthur just lacked any kind of
chemistry,
yeah, or that dangerous spark that we kind of expect from their dynamic.
I mean, Harley Quinn's a tough character to get right, isn't she?
She is.
She's got this really long, complex history in the comics and in animation, or in movies now, so there's a lot of baggage, a lot of expectations that come with her.
Absolutely.
You have to balance staying true to her origins while also finding a fresh take.
Yeah, and then there's this whole Joker fan club angle.
The Joker fan club.
Yeah, that they kind of introduce in this movie.
Oh, interesting.
Which Captain Midnight is not crazy about.
Okay.
He says they're very visually present.
Okay.
But their psychology, like why they're so devoted to Joker, is never really explored.
So they're just kind of there for the aesthetic.
Right. So he kind of poses this really intriguing question.
Yeah.
Is the movie trying to make a statement about fandom itself? About the dangers of blind devotion?
Okay, yeah.
Or is this just a plot device that they didn't fully flesh out?
Yeah, that makes you think. Is it a commentary on our own fascination with these larger-than-life figures, even the ones who represent, chaos and destruction?
Right.
Or is it just style over substance?
It's
a good question.
It's a really good question. Okay.
But before we get too deep into that, there's one more thing we have to talk about.
Okay.
That climax.
Oh, yeah.
The one everyone's talking about.
Yeah, this is where things take a very dark turn.
I've heard it's controversial.
It is. And Captain Midnight does not hold back.
Okay.
He brings up that scene where it's heavily implied that Arthur is assaulted in Arkham Asylum.
Oh, wow.
He was really troubled by this scene, and honestly, so was I.
Yeah.
It's a brutal moment.
Yeah.
And it raises some really serious questions.
Yeah.
About how sensitive topics are handled in film.
It's a tough line to walk, right?
It is.
As a filmmaker, you have this responsibility to approach these issues with nuance, with respect.
Right.
You don't want to exploit or sensationalize something so serious.
Right. And it's not just the act itself, it's the aftermath, where Arthur comes out of this experience rejecting his fan base and seemingly giving birth to an even more sinister Joker. Is this adding depth to his character? Or is it just a cheap shock tactic?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like, is this a genuine exploration of how trauma can warp someone? Or is it just trying to get a rise out of the audience?
Right. So again, it circles back to that sequel problem.
Yeah.
Does this ending justify a sequel?
Right.
Does it make the first film feel less impactful?
Yeah.
Does it answer questions or just create more?
It's interesting, isn't it, how Joker, Folie, Deux seems to be deliberately messing with our expectations. Yeah.
It's a sequel that flips the script, a musical that breaks the mold,
right?
A courtroom drama that avoids the usual thrills.
Yeah.
It's almost like...
It's like they knew.
Yeah.
They knew.
It's like they knew what we were expecting, and they decided to do the opposite.
Right. And maybe that was the whole point.
Maybe.
Right? Maybe Todd Phillips, the director, he wanted to challenge us.
Yeah.
Make us squirm a little bit.
Yeah.
Force us to question what we think a Joker story should be.
Right. Because there are these preconceived notions of what a Joker story is.
Right.
So maybe he was trying to break free from that.
Or maybe, as Captain Midnight suggests, the movie just stumbles.
Yeah.
Trying to juggle all these complex ideas and genres.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so interesting to analyze.
It does. It really is.
It's not just a simple good or bad.
Right.
It's complex.
Yeah.
It's layered.
Yeah, it really is. And it's making people think.
It is. It's making people think. And I think, it's important to remember the role that critics like Captain Midnight play in all this. They're providing this insightful analysis, even when it's critical.
Yeah.
It helps us to engage with art on a deeper level.
It challenges us to think critically.
Absolutely. To think for ourselves.
Absolutely. And not just passively consume.
Right. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not just rating this movie as good or bad.
Right.
We're digging into its flaws.
Yeah.
We're appreciating its strengths.
Yeah.
And we're wrestling with these big questions that it raises about art and entertainment.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here?
Well, let's see. We've explored the sequel dilemma.
Right.
We debated this whole musical thing.
Right.
We've dissected the courtroom drama,
Mm-hmm.
grappled with that intense climax.
Yeah.
But Captain Midnight's review doesn't end there. He leaves us with this one final, very thought-provoking question.
Oh, okay.
He asks, if this isn't the Joker we expected,
Yeah.
what does a compelling Joker story look like in today's world?
Wow. Okay.
That's a question that's going to stay with us as we continue this deep dive.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About what makes the Joker such a lasting figure.
It does. I mean, he's been around for, what, like 80 years? Something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he's gone through so many changes.
Right. From, like, that kind of goofy prankster to, like, this symbol of chaos, you know?
Yeah, anarchy.
Funky, yeah.
And now Folie Deux is throwing another, layer on top of all that.
It is. It's a lot to unpack. But I think, going back to Captain Midnight's question, what does make a compelling Joker story today, like in 2024?
Right, because the world's changed, right? Our fears have changed, what we worry about.
Totally. I mean, the Joker we saw in, like, the old comics or even The Dark Knight, those were products of their time.
So how do you make this character, this agent of chaos, relevant now?
Well, one way, and this might be a bit scary to think about, is what if you put the Joker in the digital age?
Oh, wow.
Right, like he's manipulating social media, spreading fake news, using technology to, like, amplify chaos.
That's terrifyingly plausible.
Right, it feels very, like, real, you know? And it kind of touches on what Captain Midnight was saying about the Joker being a reflection of society's dark side.
Oh, yeah. Like he feeds off our fears, our divisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a Joker story that really digs into that, like how those cracks in society make him possible, that could be really powerful.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
But it can't just be him running around being evil.
Right. He needs someone to bounce off of.
Right. Like a worthy opponent.
Someone who challenges him not just with punches and kicks, but with ideas.
Oh. So like a mental chess match.
Yes, with real stakes. Someone who gets the Joker's twisted way of thinking, but isn't afraid to, like, call him out.
So they're almost forcing him to look at himself.
Exactly. To confront his own beliefs. Maybe even offer a glimmer of hope against all that nihilism.
Well, that's a good point. It can't just be darkness and doom.
Right. You need that contrast. That reason to believe things could be better.
Now, that's a movie I'd watch.
Right. But bringing it back to Folie Deux.
Yeah.
It might not be that movie, but it's definitely gotten people talking. And I think that's part of what Captain Midnight was trying to do with his review.
Just thinking,
Yeah. Challenge our expectations, make us engage with this character, on a different level.
And that's what we're doing here, right? We're not just summarizing the plot. We're exploring ideas, getting into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. And hopefully understanding not just the Joker, but ourselves a little better along the way.
Well said. Okay, so let's get specific. What were some of the things that Captain Midnight really zeroed in on?
Well, we got to talk about that climax again. That scene in Arkham, it really bothered a lot of people.
It's a tough one to watch.
It is. And it brings up this question of, like, how far is too far when it comes to showing difficult stuff in movies?
Right. Like, filmmakers have a duty to be sensitive, but they also need to show reality sometimes. It's a balance.
It really is. And Captain Midnight felt like that scene was maybe gratuitous, like it was there for shock value, not to serve the story.
I can see that argument. And it's hard to ignore the aftermath, right? Arthur rejecting everyone and seemingly going even deeper into darkness.
Exactly. Does that show how trauma can break someone, or is the movie just trying to manipulate the audience?
It's a tough question. So for our listener, what should they be thinking about when they see this scene?
I think it comes down to remembering that art can be challenging. It's not always meant to give you easy answers or make you feel good.
Right. It's about making you feel, period.
Right, yeah.
Whether it's good or bad.
Exactly. And sometimes the stuff that makes us most uncomfortable is the stuff we need to think about the most.
That's a good point. And Captain Midnight's review, he's not shying away from that. He's making us confront it.
He is. He's a good critic in that way. Okay, but enough of the heavy stuff for a sec. Let's talk Harley Quinn.
Oh, yeah. Captain Midnight was not happy with that portrayal.
No, he wasn't. He felt like she was underdeveloped, that the romance lacked that dangerous edge.
And it is a tough relationship to portray. She's got such a long, complicated history with the Joker.
It's a tightrope walk, that relationship. Love, obsession, freedom, captivity, it's all mixed up.
And you didn't get any of that complexity here.
Not really. It felt like a missed opportunity to explore their psychology, how they affect each other.
But do you think maybe, and this is just me spitballing here,
Yeah.
maybe they were trying to show a different Harley? Like a more vulnerable one who's still figuring things out.
That's an interesting thought. Maybe it's a different stage in her evolution.
Right. But even if that was the intention,
Mm.
I think it's fair to say it didn't totally work.
Yeah, Captain Midnight's critique makes you realize how important it is to give these characters the space to breathe.
Especially complex ones like Harley.
Absolutely. And it's not just her, remember. Captain Midnight also wasn't crazy about the Joker fan club.
Oh, yeah. They were visually striking, but we didn't get WHY. They were so devoted to him.
Right. Like, what's the psychology there? It felt like a missed chance to talk about, like, the allure of chaos, how people get sucked into that.
It is. Like the darker side of fandom. It feels like there was a lot of untapped potential there.
A lot. It could have added so much more depth to the movie's commentary on society.
So, big picture, what should our listener take away from all this talk about Harley and the fan club?
That characters matter. You can't just have them be interesting to look at. They have to have depth, motivations. You know, they have to feel real.
Otherwise, they're just plot devices, not actual people.
Exactly. And I think Folie Deux sometimes falls into that trap.
But let's be fair, this is just one person's take.
Of course. Captain Midnight's review is a starting point. It's an invitation to have a bigger conversation.
And that's what we're all about here, right? To dive deep, analyze, debate, hopefully come away with a better understanding of it all.
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding, I think it's time we try to wrap our heads around the big picture here.
Okay. Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. Sequels, musicals, Harley, the fan club, that intense ending. So where does Captain Midnight land on all of this? What's his overall verdict?
Well, he does say the movie has its moments. He likes the visuals, the acting, you know, the sheer ambition of it.
Okay, so it's not all bad.
No, not at all. But his main point seems to be that it's a movie of missed opportunities. Like it tried to do too much and ended up sacrificing some depth and coherence.
So not a total train wreck, but not a masterpiece either.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. It's got brilliance and flaws all mixed together.
Which is what makes it so interesting to analyze, right? It's not a simple good or bad movie.
Exactly. It's complex, it's messy, it makes you think.
And that's what we've been trying to do this whole time, right?
Yeah.
Go beyond just saying, I liked it or I hated it.
Absolutely. We're looking at the choices the filmmakers made, what they were trying to do, and how it affects us as viewers.
And it's important to remember the role critics play in all of this. Like Captain Midnight. They're helping us to engage with art in a more meaningful way.
Totally. They make us think critically, question our assumptions, appreciate the craft of storytelling.
And in this case, with Folie Deux, Captain Midnight's review has given us a lot to think about.
It has. Sequels, the use of music, character development, and of course the whole idea of the Joker as a cultural figure.
And he left us with that big question, right?
He did. If this isn't the Joker we expected, then what is?
Heavy stuff. And we'll keep exploring that as we wrap things up in the final part of this deep dive.
We'll get into Captain Midnight's concluding thoughts, revisit some key themes, and hopefully leave our listeners with some food for thought.
So stay tuned, folks. The conversation is far from over. All right, so we're back, still trying to make sense of Joker, Folie Deux. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to, well, what did Captain Midnight actually think of the movie? Like, in the end, did he like it or not?
You know, he never really gives us a straight answer. It's more like he throws the question back at us, you know?
Yeah, he does that.
If this isn't the Joker we wanted, what is the Joker we want? Especially nowadays.
Man, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about how this character's been around forever, from silly pranks to, like, straight-up anarchy.
Exactly. And the world's a different place now. So how do you even tell a Joker story that feels real, that means something in 2024?
It can't just be random crazy stuff,
Yeah.
right? There has to be a reason, a point to it all.
I think you got to go deep into his head. Like, WHY does he do what he does? What's his deal with society, you know?
Because he does point out the flaws in our systems, right? The hypocrisy, the stuff we don't want to look at.
He forces us to see it. So a good Joker story has to explore those themes, but in a way that makes you think, not just shock you.
So it can't just be about the violence or the craziness.
No. There has to be a message, something that says something about us, about how we live.
And it should make us uncomfortable, right? Like really challenge our beliefs.
Exactly. Because the best Joker stories, they hold up a mirror to our own dark side, to the things we're scared of, the stuff we try to ignore.
So what would that even look like in a modern story? How do you make the Joker relevant NOW.
Imagine a story where he's using technology, right? Social media, all the ways we get our information.
Oh, no, go on.
And he's twisting it, manipulating it, feeding off our addiction to, like, instant news and quick answers.
That is messed up, but you're right. It feels so possible.
Because it plays into our real anxieties about who to trust, what's true, that kind of thing.
Okay, so that's scary. But is there any hope in a story like that? Like, how do you fight that kind of Joker?
You need someone who can beat him at his own game. Someone who understands him, but also sees the good that's still possible.
So not just a physical fight, but like a battle of ideas.
Yes. Someone who offers an alternative to all that negativity, who reminds us that there's something worth fighting for.
Man, that'd be amazing to see. So Folie might not have been that movie, but it definitely started a lot of conversations.
It did, and I think Captain Midnight was hoping for that. To make us think about these characters, about how to adapt them for today, about what filmmakers should even be doing with these stories.
Because it's a big responsibility, right? You're dealing with these iconic figures that mean a lot to people.
And they have the power to say something important about the world.
So I guess that's what we're left with. Folie wasn't perfect, but it got us thinking. And that's kind of the point of art, isn't it?
To challenge us, to make us question things, to start conversations that go beyond just the movie itself.
Exactly. This whole review, this deep dive, it wasn't just about picking apart one movie. It was about how we engage with these stories, how we figure out what they mean to us.
And we want to hear from you. What does a good Joker story look like in your mind? What would you want to see?
Hit us up in the comments. Tell us your thoughts. Because this conversation, it doesn't end here. It's something we got to keep talking about.
The Joker, he's always pushing us, even when we don't like it. He makes us think about the good and the bad, about what it means to be human.
And that's worth exploring, even if it's a little scary sometimes. So until next time, keep those deep dives going, keep those conversations happening. And thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.